In today's video, I'm going to show you the fastest and easiest way to accept payments on your Django and React applications using the Stripe payment gateway with Stripe Checkout. Also, don't forget to subscribe because I release videos like this each and every week, so if you don't want to miss out, then do make sure to smash the absolute heck out of that subscribe button. Now, learning how to use payment gateways on an application can be pretty confusing, and so this video should help walk you through and eliminate any confusion around how to do this in a Django and React application using Stripe. We will be using Stripe Checkout to accomplish this. And how Stripe Checkout works is that when the user clicks to checkout, then we are going to create a session, which is going to be a Stripe Checkout session. We're going to configure the session and then redirect the user to this session, where then they will land on a pre-built checkout page from Stripe, and they will either complete their payment or cancel their payment. Then once you're done with this quick tutorial, you'll have the ability to easily accept payments on your Django and React applications using Stripe. So here we see the application in action. So right now I have localhost 3000 open, which is where my React application is running on a development server. And then here we see the product. So this is just something that's taken from the Stripe documentation. And then we have on localhost 8000, we're running our Django Backend API. And then that's what's going to be responsible for creating the Stripe checkout session for us. So that's going to create the session. It's going to redirect us to it. And then once we either cancel or complete the payment, we'll get redirected back to this page with some query parameters added into the URL. So let's go ahead, click on this checkout and see how this works. So here we have that session created by Django for us, and we got redirected to it. So now we see it open here. So this is the Stripe checkout session. Then I can go ahead, enter an email. I can enter a card. All right, and then if I were to click on this right here, that would cancel this. And if I click on this, then that would actually do the payment and then do a success. So I can click on this. And here we are. We're now redirected back here. So this ended up bringing us back to localhost 3000 on the slash route. And then we have the query parameters added in here of success equals true and session ID is equal to the session ID. So if this is successful or if it was canceled, I'm not really doing anything special other than console logging that this was successful or it was canceled. So if I open up my console, here I can see order placed, you will receive an email confirmation. And then if it was canceled, which I can also demonstrate. So if I have canceled here, which is equal to true, then instead I'm just going to console log order canceled, continue to shop around and check out when you're ready. So that's all that's really happening. Of course, in your real application, you'd maybe want to do something different, like bring the user to a thank you page if it's successful, and then if they canceled, maybe show some kind of alert that they canceled, things like that. But of course, this is just to show you how to implement this as fast as possible, so I won't be doing that. And then now if I go into my Stripe dashboard, go into my payments, and then do a refresh, I should then see a new payment that succeeded here. And there we are. A brand new payment was made. It was succeeded. So there we go. Everything works. So that's what we're going to learn how to implement in this video. All right. So now let's go ahead and take a look at how we can implement this. So right here, I have a VS Code editor open, and I opened a folder, which I call Django React Stripe Checkout. And then here is where I'm going to create my Django backend and my React front end. So to follow along, you're just going to need Node on your system. So the version of Node I'm using is 14.17.3. And then my NPM version is 8.1.2, and then you're also going to need Python 3 on your system. So the version of Python 3 I have is 3.9.6. Now with that, the first thing I'm going to do is inside of here, I'm going to create a folder called Backend, and this is where I'm going to create my Django backend. And then here in my terminal, I'm going to run a command, which is going to create my front end, which is going to be npx create-react-app, and then the name of the folder, which is going to be front end. So once I run this, you're going to see a front end folder in here, and that's going to be my React front end. And I'm creating that with create React app, which is going to be client-side React. So I'm going to click enter to that. And then while that's going on, I'm going to go ahead, open up a new terminal. I can do that with this plus. Then I'm going to do a cd backend. So that way I can navigate into this backend folder and then start configuring this Django project. So first thing I'm going to do is create a virtual environment. I can do that with Python 3-m venv, and then the name of the folder, which is going to be my virtual environment, which is going to be the exact same, just venv. So now I have this venv folder in here. So I can activate my virtual environment now with source venv bin activate. So now I have this venv thing here. On Windows, you can just do ./venv/scripts/activate. Also, the S in scripts might be lowercase. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But anyway, so that's going to activate your virtual environment, which means now when we use the pip package manager, these packages are going to be in our virtual environment. So I can do pip install. And then the packages I'm going to need are Django, Django REST framework, which is just a library built on top of Django for making REST APIs. And then I'm going to need the Stripe package as well. So I'm going to click enter to this, and that's going to go ahead and install all the packages I'm going to need to configure this on the backend. So that all finished up. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a clear. And then to create my Django project, I'm just going to do Django-admin, start project, and then the name of the project is going to be core. And I'm going to put a dot so it's in the current directory, which is the backend folder. So now inside of my backend, I'm going to have my virtual environment, this core Django project, and a manage.py, which now I can use. So I'm going to use this manage.py, and I'm going to use it to create an app using start app, and the name of the app is going to be payments. So here I'm going to have my logic for creating this Stripe checkout session. So let's now see how things are with the front end. So it looks like the front end is all wrapped up. So I'm going to clear, navigate into my front end. And then one thing I want to note with the front end right now, if you do an npm audit, one thing you're going to see is a bunch of vulnerabilities. So here you see 58 vulnerabilities, 16 moderate, 40 high, 2 critical. Now, one thing I want to point out is because I do get questions about this quite often, I just want to point this out in this video. And this isn't exactly something you need to be concerned about. This is actually coming from this React scripts package, which is being utilized in this scripts to do things like when we do npm run start, then React scripts is going to run the start command, which is going to start the development server. You can also build a project, do tests, also do an eject, and then that you would do if you want to kind of tweak something from the default setup with create React app. So all these things React scripts is handling for us. But the thing is, React scripts is more of a dev dependency, although there are reasons why they put it in this dependencies. One of the reasons being because when you deploy on some platforms, it's only going to look at what's in the dependencies and not in the dev dependencies. And there's also other reasons why they put it in here as well. But that's the thing that's actually causing these vulnerabilities. So what you can do is you can actually make a dev dependencies, and then you can just place React scripts inside of here instead. So I'm going to cut that, paste it in here, remove this comma, then remove this here, and do a save. So now when you do an npm audit and then -- production, then what you're going to see is the vulnerabilities in the production environment, which is going to be 0. So that's just something I wanted to point out, so you don't worry when you see something like this, because I know this might cause a little bit of panic if you're not very experienced when it comes to React. And then we also have these testing libraries in here, which are also dependencies that we can place in the dev dependencies as well. So I'm just going to cut these, and I'm going to place them in the dev dependencies as well, because that's a good place where they could also sit. So that's just a little side note I wanted to put out there, just when you create a React project using create React app. So with that, I'm just going to close all this up, and I'm going to switch to my browser. So here on my browser, I search for Stripe. So you're going to want to have a Stripe account. If you don't have one, you're going to want to create one. So just search for Stripe, go to stripe.com, and then I'm already logged in, so I see this dashboard. But normally if you're not logged in, you'll click the sign in button. And then if you don't have an account, then you can just click sign up. So I'm going to go ahead, click on this dashboard. And then when you're inside of here, you want to make sure that you're on test mode. So I'm going to come back to this a little bit later. So the next thing I want to go to is the Stripe documentation, which is at stripe.com/docs, or you can just Google for Stripe documentation, and it should be the first link. So I'm going to click on that. Then from there, I'm going to click on payments, and then online, or even here I see it already, but online, it's going to for sure be here, and you want to look for this accept online payments. And then we're going to be using a pre-built checkout page. And then in this case, I'm going to be using React and Python. So Python is what's going to actually create this checkout session, and React is what's going to make this request. So now in their example, they actually use Flask, but I'm going to be using Django instead. So there's going to be some tweaks we're going to have to make to this, but that's okay. But before I go ahead and utilize this, one thing I want to do is just configure some things on my Django backend real quick. So right here, I search for Django REST Framework, and then I'm just going to go to the Django REST Framework documentation. And then inside of here, one thing I need to do is after I install it with this Pip Install command, which is something we did, I need to put REST Framework in my installed apps. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to copy that, open up my core settings.py inside of my backend folder. Also, I'm getting a little thing that Visual Studio Code needs to be updated. I'll do that a little bit later. So in my settings.py, I'm going to find my installed apps setting. And then right below here, I'm going to go ahead, paste REST Framework. And then I'm also going to paste in this payments app inside of here as well. So I'm going to have payments here. So I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to go back. And then the next thing I want to do is just have the REST framework setting as well. So I'm going to copy this, go back to my code, scroll somewhere down at the bottom, and maybe right below the static URL setting, I can go ahead, paste this in. I'm going to remove these comments. And then for the default permission classes, I want to have this be allow any. So that's going to be the permission on my class-based views. And I'm going to be creating one inside of this project, which is going to be for creating that Stripe checkout session. Then the next thing I'm going to do is inside of this payments, I'm going to open up this views.py. I'm just going to remove what's inside of here. Then now I'm going to go ahead, jump back here, go into this pre-built checkout page, which I seem to have opened twice. So I'm just going to close one of these. I'm going to go to this server.py. I'm going to copy whatever's inside of here. Then I'm going to go back here and just paste that inside of this views.py. So right now, all of this is configured using Flask, and I'm not using Flask, so I'm going to have to tweak things. So for now, I'm just going to clean things up, remove this. Also, I'm going to remove all these imports since I don't need them. The Stripe import is something I need, so I'm going to keep that one. Just going to remove this comment. And then here we have this API secret key, which is something we have to configure. So what I'm going to do for this secret key, I'm actually going to go to my settings.py, and I'm going to make a setting inside of here. I'll put it, say, right over here. Also, I accidentally opened this up, so I'm just going to exit out of that, close up this terminal. I also might as well just minimize this terminal here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a setting called Stripe Secret Key. Then that's going to be my Stripe Secret Key. So I'm going to go into Stripe now. I'm going to click on this Developers, and then API Keys, and this is where you can find your secret key. So I'm going to reveal this one. I'm going to click it to copy it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paste it in here. So that way inside of my settings, I have my Stripe secret key. And then from there, inside of my views, I can import it. So I can do a from Django.conf import settings. And then what I can do is instead of having it hard-coded here like this, what I can do instead is settings.stripe secret key. And then here, they're configuring a Flask app. This is something I don't want to do, so I'm going to get rid of that. Here they have the domain. I don't need that. And then they're creating a route. And then this route is at /create checkout session. Mine's going to be a slightly different route. And then also the way I configure this endpoint is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to have to import a few things. So from REST framework.views, I'm going to import API view, which is something I'm going to want to inherit from. And then instead of defining this endpoint like this, I'm going to do class Stripe checkout view. Then I'm going to inherit the API view so I can extend that functionality. And then I want this to be a post request. So I'm going to define a post method, pass in self and request. And then I'm going to indent all of this over. And then I'm also going to get rid of this right over here. So let's take a look at what we have right now. So this code right here is creating our checkout session, and we're doing that with stripe.checkout.session.create. And then we're passing the line items, which is what we're going to be purchasing. And then I'm just going to remove this comment. And then what we have to pass here is for each line item, we need the price and the quantity. So this price is going to be the price ID of the product. So we need to create this product. So I'm going to go back, and to create this product, we're going to go to products and then add product. And then the product name will just be something like book. And then for the image, I'm just going to use the image that they have in this pre-built checkout page. So that's this image right over here. And to get that image, I can actually just go to this app.js, and they have a link to it right over here. So they have this image tag with the source. So I'm just going to copy that, then go into here, paste that URL, click enter. Then from there, I can just download this image. So I can right click, save image as. That's going to go in my downloads folder, and then I'm just going to call this something like book. So there we are. So this book is now downloaded, which means now I can go back into my Stripe dashboard, click on this upload, and then just grab this book.png. And then you can even add a description. So I'm going to do wonderful book about marbles, let's say, because it looks like they're holding a marble or something here. And then I'm going to create the price. It's going to be standard pricing. It's going to be a one-time payment. And then here in their example, they use $20. So I'm just going to do the exact same. I'm just going to do 20.00. And there we go. I can now just save this product. And then I have this product, which is going to now have a price ID, which I can just go ahead and copy. And then I can go back to my code. And then right over here, I can just paste in the price ID. So there we go. So this line items is going to be what's being purchased. Then we're going to have the payment method types. And in my case, I'm just going to have card as the payment method types. And then the mode's going to be payment. So you can either do payment, subscription, or setup. Payment being a one-time payment, subscription being a subscription, and setup being a setup for the customer so you can charge them at a future date. Then we're going to have the success URL. So if the payment's successful, this is where they're going to get redirected to. And then if they cancel, which is just going back, then we're going to redirect them to this URL. So for this URL, I'm going to have my front end and back end running on localhost, but they're going to be on different ports. And then in production, you'd also probably have them on different domains. Maybe you'd have your front end running on your main domain and maybe your back end on a subdomain, something like that. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my settings. And I'm just going to make a setting which is going to be site URL. And this is just going to be HTTP localhost 3000. So this way we get redirected to our React front end. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of having your domain here, I'm going to do settings.site URL for both of these here. And then the route that they show here is /success.html and /cancel.html, but I'm just going to have them both going to the home page. So just like this, it's going to go to /, and then I'm also going to pass query parameters. So on the success, I'm going to have a query parameter of success equals true. And then I'm also going to have session underscore ID, which is going to be checkout session ID. And then you want to make sure you have these curly braces here. So this session right here from Stripe, it's going to pre-populate the session ID inside of here. So you can have it inside the query parameter and then you can utilize it. And then here, if we do the cancel, what I'm going to have is a query parameter, which is going to be canceled, and that's going to be equal to true. And then what I'm going to do is right over here, I'm going to have this redirect actually happening just right after this right here. And then in the accept, I'm just going to return an error response. And then I have to make sure I import response. So I'm going to do from REST framework.response. I'm going to import response. And then I'm also going to do from REST framework, I'm going to import status. And then there's also this redirect. Now this redirect is something that was imported with that Flask example, but in Django, we're going to do this redirect slightly different because of course we're using Django. So right over here, I already have open some documentation from Django, and this is on redirect. So in order to do redirects with Django, you're just going to import it with this right here. So from Django.shortcuts, you're going to import redirect. And then with redirect, you can pass a couple of things. You can pass a model, a view name, or an absolute or relative URL. In our case, we're going to be using an absolute URL. And then what this is going to do, it's going to return an HTTP response redirect. So once the client sees this, then it's going to redirect to that URL. So that's the way that works. You can also directly import HTTP response redirect. So the way that would work is you would just do from Django.http import HTTP response redirect. So this is kind of similar to redirect, except this is a little bit longer. And then the only thing you can pass in here is the URL, whereas the redirect's a little bit more versatile, and also the name's a little bit shorter. So I think redirect is a little bit nicer to use. So I'm just going to do from Django.shortcuts, and then I'm just going to import redirect. And then I'm just going to remove this code equals 303. This is just something in Flask, so that way they can have a 303 status code. In this case, by default, redirect's just going to have a 302 status code, and then you can also pass an additional optional parameter, which by default is going to be false. That's as permanent equals false. And then when this is false, it's going to be a 302 status code. When you set this to true, then it's going to be a 301 status code. So that's the way that this redirect works with Django. So with that, we can go back here and then finish up this error response. So it's going to return a response if we hit this accept. So if anything goes wrong during this process, this right here is what we're going to hit. And then it's just going to have a response with some JSON data that's going to have an error. It's just going to say something went wrong when creating Stripe checkout session. And then I can pass a status to this response, which is just going to be a 500 internal server error response. So HTTP 500 internal server error. There we are. So with that, now we have everything set up on our backend in terms of the view. Now we just have to make a URL endpoint that's going to utilize this view. So inside of this payments, I'm going to create a urls.py file. Then I'm going to import from Django.urls. I'm going to import path. Then I'm also going to need that view I created. So from .views, so current directory views, I'm going to import that Stripe checkout view. And then I'm going to create a URL patterns and make sure this is spelled right. It has to be URL patterns, plural like this. Then I'm going to have my path. And then I'm going to have that Stripe checkout view, chain on a .as view, because this is a class-based view. And then I'm going to have it like this for now. And then I'm going to go into my urls.py inside of my core project folder. And then let's make this complete URL endpoint. So the endpoint I'm going to have, So I'm going to create a new path. And I also don't need this admin path since I'm not using the admin in this project. And another thing I'm going to need is this include. So the path I'm going to have is API/stripe/ and then inside of here, I'm going to put create checkout session. So the complete endpoint is going to be API/stripe/create checkout session. And then when we hit that with a post request, then it's going to create this Stripe checkout session. That's the way this is going to work. Then inside of here, I have to also do an include, and then in quotes, I can do payments, which is the name of the app, then .urls. So this way, it's going to extend these URLs onto this payments URLs. So I can now save both of these files, and everything should now be fine in terms of the Django backend side. So I can just close up everything, and then I can just quickly see if I made any typos by doing a Python manage.py run server. See if everything runs correctly. Perfect, everything runs. We just have these unapplied migrations. So I can go ahead and do a Python manage.py migrate. It's going to migrate everything, and then I can go ahead and run the server. So there we go. Everything in terms of our backend is now all set up. So now the next thing we're going to tackle is this front end. So I'm going to close up this terminal once again. And then inside of this front end, we have a bunch of different files. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove most of them here. The only thing I'm going to keep is this index.js. So I'm going to remove that. And then the index.js. I'm not going to have the report web vitals. I'm going to remove that since I'm not making use of it. And then also the index CSS I don't need in here. And then I'm just going to leave it like so. And then I'm going to go ahead, create that app.js. And let's take a look at what they have in the example. So in their app.js, let's go ahead, copy this code, go back to our application here, and paste it in here, and do a save. So here they have the app, and then they have it being a stateful component with some message here. And then they have a useEffect hook, which is going to grab the query parameters, either success or canceled. And then if success is true, they're going to go and show this message. And then if canceled is true, then they're going to show this message. And it's just going to return this right here. So if message is true, or I guess if it's truthy, then we're going to return this. Otherwise, we're going to return this. So that's the way that they have it. And I want it to be a little bit different. So for one, the way that they extract the query parameters, I want to have this be a little bit different. Instead, I want to use React Router DOM to do this, just because oftentimes in React projects, you're going to have routing. And then I like to have the app component usually just have this routing defined. So that's the way I'm going to have things. So inside of my front end terminal here, I want to make sure I'm inside of the correct folder. So that should be inside of my front end, so perfect. So while inside of here, I can do an npm install save React Router DOM. So that's going to go ahead and install that. And then again, we see all these vulnerabilities. But of course, if you do an npm audit production, we shouldn't have any vulnerabilities present. So there's 0. So you don't need to worry about that. So what I'm going to do now is just set up the routing. So I'm going to create a new file, which I'm going to call homepage.js. And then this right here is going to be that /route. So this is going to be the component that returns whatever is on that route. I'm going to import React from React, just doing some basic boilerplate, const homepage. All right, and then this homepage is going to be very similar to what's inside of here. So we're going to have the useEffect hook. So that's where it's going to be present. So I'm just going to grab this useEffect hook. I'm going to cut it from here. I'm going to go to my homepage. And then right above this return, I'm going to paste it in here. And then also want to make sure I bring in useEffect inside of here. So useEffect, I'm going to destructure it like so. And then here, they were using a stateful component where they have this message state, and then they do a set message. But instead, I'm just going to do a console.log just to make this a little bit simpler. So if we have this success query parameter, we're going to console.log this. And then if we have the canceled query parameter, which is true, and then in that case, we're going to console.log this right here. So that's the way I want to do it. And then if we go back, so I'm going to just remove whatever's here. I don't need this message. And then this right here is something I'm going to want. So I'm going to go highlight this entire section part. There we are. Then I'm going to cut it, go back to my home page, and then between this return is where I'm going to paste this in here. So now what I have inside of here, and I'm also gonna just minimize that terminal to have a little bit more space. So we have our use effect hook. So this is extracting those query parameters. Now this is a way you can do it, but I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. And then if we have the success equals true, console.log this, cancel equals true, console.log this, and then we're gonna return this right here, which is just going to be that image with the description, the price, and then our checkout button. Now in this form, we have this action, and this is gonna make a post request to /create-checkout-session. Now in our case, the API endpoint's a little bit different. So what we have is API/stripe/, and then if we take a look, so in our core URLs, that's the API/stripe/, and then create checkout session. So this right here is the proper URL that we want to hit with a post request. So I can close up these two files now, and then I'm going to save, and I'm going to come back to this homepage a little bit later. For now, let's go to this app. I'm going to remove this app.css, and then I'm going to import the homepage. And then I'm also going to import a few things here. So one thing I'm going to need is route and also browser router. And I'm just going to call this router with the as keyword, so that way I can refer to it as router instead of browser router. This is coming from React router DOM. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up some routing, and we're really only going to have one route. I'm going to now define my app and make sure to have the default export. And then I'm just going to return JSX. So I'm just going to use the round parentheses here. And what I'm going to do is have router. That's going to wrap everything, and I'm going to have my different routes. So these are the two components that I imported. So route and browser router, which I'm referring to as router. And then this route, I need to pass a path, which is going to be / and also the component, which is going to be the home page. And then I also don't need this use state and use effect, so I can remove these from here, clean this up. So right now we can go ahead and test things out and see where we're at. So inside of my front end terminal, I can do an npm run start. And then back inside of here, I should have localhost 3000 open up, and then we can take a look and see if things are working. So perfect, we have the image, we have this heading, we have the price, and we have the checkout button, which right now should work. So what I can do is I can just click on this checkout, and of course I'm hitting the wrong URL here, so let me go back for a moment. Now this should be localhost 8000 that we're hitting. So what I'm gonna do is inside of the source, I'm gonna create a config folder, and then I'm going to create an index.js inside of there. And then all this is going to do, it's going to do export const API URL. It's going to be a constant, which is going to be my API URL. And then from here, I can do process.env.react app API URL, or, whoops, this should be, or like, not like that. There we go. Or it's going to be HTTP localhost 8000. So this API URL, if there's an environment variable that's called React App API URL, then we're going to utilize that. Otherwise, we're going to utilize this. This is a nice way to have this. So if you're in production, then you can just create an environment variable, which is your actual domain. But if this doesn't exist, then you're just going to use localhost 8000. So this is a nice way to organize things. And now that I have that, I can just go to my homepage. I can import API URL now. That's going to come from my config folder, index, and then what I can do is go down right here with the action. I'm gonna have to use curly braces, and then instead of these quotes, I'm gonna have to use backticks, just like that. And then by using the backticks, I can do $ curly brace, and then bring in that API URL. So this way I have HTTP localhost 8000 /API/stripe/ create checkout session. So with that, now this should work. So if I click this checkout, there we are. Now we have the Stripe checkout page. And then the line item is just this book with this price and this description. And then we see the image, and then we can fill in the information and complete this. So right now this actually works. So I can now go into my Stripe dashboard payments. And then what I'm going to notice is I have an incomplete payment right now for $20. And then what I can do is I can complete this payment. So I can do something like johndoe@gmail.com. And then I can put in some card. So I'm going to use this 4242 card, put in an expiration date, CVV, name on the card, and then a postal code. Then from there, I can click on Pay. And then here we are. We're redirected now to localhost 3000, and then we're passing in the query parameter of success equals true, and then the session ID, which you can see that the session ID got pre-populated in here, just like I said. And then if I open up my console, I can also see order placed. You will receive an email confirmation. So that console.log got hit. So perfect. And then if I go to my payments, and then I do a refresh, now I see succeeded. So the payment went through and everything worked. Now there's just some slight differences I want to do here. So on this home page, like I mentioned, they're doing the query like this, but I want to do it a little bit differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import use location. This is coming from React Router DOM. And then right over here, I can do const location is use location. And then instead of doing this here, instead, what I can do is I can grab those query parameters from location.search. So I can do const values is equal to location.search. And then I can do a console.log on values just so that we can see what this returns right now. And then also I'm just going to comment this out for now just so that we're not getting this error. So what I'm going to do is go back here, do a refresh, open up my console. And then this right here is what we're getting returned. So it's not in a very convenient format where I can just grab the success. So one thing that you can do is you can import a package. So we can do an npm install, or I guess I should say install a package. So npm install save query string. This is a package that's going to help us get these query parameter values in an object format so that it's easy to extract the values. So now I'm going to do npm run start. And then right over here, I'm going to go ahead and import query string from query string. And then what I can do is query string dot parse, and then I'm going to parse this location dot search. So with that, now let's see what this values returns. So now we get the session ID and the success. So now it's in a nice and easy format where we can just extract them. So now what I can do is with these if checks, I'm going to now uncomment them. And then this one here, it's going to be values.success is how I can extract that, because remember this values is now in an object format. And then I can just grab the success. And then this one here is going to be values.canceled. So this is the way I'm going to grab these query parameters now. And then one thing I can do is just remove whatever's in here, and then I can test out the canceled equals true. I'm going to enter that, and then here I see the console log happening. So order canceled, continue to shop around and check out when you're ready. So that works. And then why that worked is because we hit this if check where we grabbed values.success. That didn't exist, so this ended up being undefined, which is falsy. So then we didn't end up running this code. We went to this one, values.canceled was true. So then we ended up console logging this right here. So that's the way that that works. And then also I don't need this console log here anymore, so I'm just going to remove that. So the home page is now set up, and now everything's working appropriately. So the last thing that you can really add if you want is just some styling so that this here looks a little bit nicer and is maybe side by side with a nice looking checkout button. So maybe that's the last little thing I'm going to do, and then I'm going to put a wrap to this tutorial. So I'm going to go back to my code. So here we have this div with a class name of product, which is wrapping everything. Then we have this description, which is wrapping these two headers here. And then one thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a class to this button just so I can easily style the button. And I'm just going to call this class something like button. So what I'm going to do now is inside of my source, I'm going to create a homepage.css. And then inside of my home, I just have to import this. So right at the top, I can do an import homepage.css. And that way I can bring in the styling inside of the homepage. So back inside of here, first thing I'm going to do is maybe style that image with product and then image is how I can select it. So we have the product class element that we're selecting, and then inside of that we have the image tag. So that's how I'm selecting that. And then I'm going to set a width of something like 200 pixels and a height of something like 150 pixels, just to make that image a little bit smaller. So there we are. Then the next thing I'm going to do is style the product class. And then I'm going to use some flexbox just to make the layout a little bit easier to manage. Then I'm going to do a justify content, space between I'll do. and then I'll align the items with a flex start. So this way it's going to be laid out horizontally, and then what's going to be laid out horizontally is this image and then this div here. So it's going to be the image, the div, it's going to be a space between. So this image is going to hug the left, the description is going to hug the right, and then they're going to be aligned at the top with that flex start. So or did I save? No, I didn't. So let me save this. So there we are. Now we have the image, and then we have the description. So right now it's very, very far apart, so we're going to have to tweak this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a width to this, something like 480 pixels. I'm going to set a background color. And this is going to be RGBA 000 0.1. So this is going to be a black color with a 0.1 opacity. And then I can also set a height to this of something like 150 pixels. I'm going to set some margin to the top. So 50 pixels, some margin to the left of say 50 pixels. Some margin at the bottom, just to space out that button a bit. And then I can also add something like a box shadow. So for the horizontal, I'll do 1 pixel. For the vertical, I'll do 2 pixels. The blur, I'll do 3 pixels. And then for the color, I'll do an RGBA, which is going to be a black with an opacity of 0.2. So let's see how this looks right now. And there we go. That's looking pretty nice. So all we really have left to style is this heading here, the price, and then the button. So let's go ahead and style those. So I'll do description, and then I'll select that H3. So remember, inside of the description div, we have the H3 and the H5 that we're going to style. First, I'm going to do the H3. So I'll set a font size of, say, 24 pixels, and then add some padding to the right, just so it's not hugging that right side. And I'll do something like 20 pixels. So there we go. That looks a lot better. And then I'm going to style the price. So to make that easier, I'll just copy paste, select the H5. And then I'm going to remove this padding right. This I'm going to make a little bit smaller, something like 18 pixels. And then I'll set a font weight of, say, 200. So there we are, looking pretty good. And then finally, I just want to style that button so it looks a little bit better. So I'll do a font size of 18 pixels, put some padding on that button, have a background color. Then for the background color, I found this nice color, which is 556CD6. And then this color right here is actually the same color that's being used for this right over here. So if you actually inspect this element, you'll see that that's the exact same color. So that's why I want to use that same color right over here. Of course, this still looks a little bit ugly, so let's keep tweaking this. Next, I'm going to set the text color to be white. I'm going to set border to none. That way we don't have that ugly border. Put some margin to the left of 50 pixels just so that it's aligned with this right over here, the product. Then I'm going to set the width to be 480 pixels. That way it's the exact same as the product as well. And then finally, I just want to have a box shadow, which I'm going to use the same box shadow here. So that should look pretty nice now. So if we go back, there we go. That's looking pretty proper, except when I hover over this, I can't really tell that it's clickable. So the last thing I'm going to do is just add a hover to this button, and that should wrap things up. I'll do button with a pseudo class of hover. I'm going to do cursor pointer, just to have a little pointer, and then also set the opacity to be 0.9. And with that, we should now be all wrapped up. So if I hover over this, there we go. Now that looks like a nice clickable button. So I can remove this here, and then click on checkout. So here we are. I'm going to do one more little test here. So now back inside of my Stripe dashboard and my payments. Now I should have another incomplete payment showing up. Perfect. And then I can also close up some of these things I don't need anymore. And then also I have this showing up right here, which is from my last tutorial. It's showing making gains. So that was because in the last tutorial, I was showing how to do this in Next.js, and then the product was a protein powder. So one thing I'm going to quickly do just to change that is go into this gear icon, account details, and then I'm going to change the public business name to something else. I'll do, say, Stripe checkout, and then I'll have the exact same thing in the statement descriptor, and then save that. So with that, now if I go ahead, click on this checkout, now I see Stripe checkout showing up here instead. So that'll look a little bit nicer. Then I can go ahead, do a test payment. Now let's go ahead and click on pay, and then everything should work out. So there we go. Now we see success equals true, session ID, And then back inside of here, if I do a refresh, so we see this one previously was incomplete because we canceled, but this one here we completed the payment, so it's showing as complete. So there we are. That is the entire tutorial now all wrapped up. So now you know how to create a payment in a Django and React application using Stripe checkout. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button. It goes a long way to help a channel like mine grow and get recognized so others can benefit from the videos I release as well. Also, I have links in the description that you can check out. I have one for an e-commerce course that you can check out if you're interested in learning to develop an application like that. I also have a link for joining my Web Development Kings Facebook group. That way, if you want to personally ask me something, then you can go right ahead and do that, and I will happily help you out. It doesn't cost you anything, so if you're scratching your head about something, then you can go right ahead and ask me to help you out. Only questions I probably won't answer if you want me to help you build some kind of personal project, as I don't quite have the time for that sort of thing. You can also post something in the group itself. That way, other developers in the group can help you out with something as well. The group is all about growing your expertise as a developer, so if you're interested in that, then go ahead, click that link in the description, and join the family. Also, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notification bells, that way you don't miss out when I release a new video, and I'll see you in the next one.